Okay, so now we're at the point where we want to create the side view of this drawing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a few construction layer guides that will help us to create the side view. So we're going to create a circle of diameter 4, of radius 4. And if you take note, this is exactly the same as the radius of the outer edge of the part. And if you actually walked through the book and went through the instructions of the book, it had you create this initially. The next line I'm going to create is the actual construction line, and that's going to go from the intersection of the bottom of the circle and just make a horizontal line. This is going to be our guide for our construction layer. And we're this construction line, and where we're going to put. This will be the guide for where we'll put this side view drawing. So now we're going to turn on the object layer. We're going to start drawing in just a second here. And we're going to draw this part based on the grid. Now, I know I've said a couple of times I hardly ever use the grid. In this case, for this drawing, it's actually fairly helpful to use the grid. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change my snap from the polar snap to a grid snap. So now we're on the object layer. I'm going to choose the line, and I'm going to come right to here, and actually we have something that's not on. So let's look at our snap settings and see what we have. We're snapped to rectangular, snapping, isometric snap, polar tracking. Polar tracking is on. Track orthogonal only is fine for this point, or for this part. And object snap is on. Let's go back and check grid snap. We're set up for grid snap. And let's actually turn on, I think no, we don't want isometric snap, rectangular snap. We'll choose a line. And you can see as I move my mouse, we just kind of, this step, you can see we sort of make discrete steps as I move the mouse cursor. So we're going to come down here to the intersection of this construction line and this box, and we're going to start drawing. So we're going to start here, we're going to move up, and we're going to move up by 8 because that's the height of our part. And then we're going to move over by, actually, it turns out to be exactly 1 block, or 0.5. So you can type 0.5 if your grid setup is somehow different. We're going to come back down to this construction line. And then we're going to move it back over. And that actually creates the main portion of the Geneva cam. To create the rest of it, we're now going to switch back. We're going to go back into our snap settings, turn on our polar snap, and polar tracking. I am going to give you a little bit of foreshadowing. I'm going to turn polar tracking on, set for all angles, and I'm going to set my incremental angle to 15 degrees. You're going to see in a few minutes when we get to dimensioning that we're going to use that. So I know about it right now, so I'm going to set it up now so that we're prepared for it. Okay, so we need to create this bump out, and that bump out is going to correspond to this circle here. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose our line, and from here we're going to just bring our tracking line over to our edge. Let's start our block, move over by 0.5, move up by 2.5, and then move over horizontally to complete the part. Okay, so this is completed now. The outside edges, except for the radius. So let's put in the radius. And you're going to see that something's going to change as we put in the radius. So I went up and I chose fillet. And my radius is already set to 0.25, so I don't need to actually change it. If I needed to change it, I would type R, enter, and then 0.25, enter. And now I can just go and select the radius. So I select this line, and then I select this line. And you can see we just lost half our part. But that's okay. We can just put the rest back in. And for now, at least, I'm just going to put this part in. And then complete the radius or the fillet. So I already set to 0.25. So I'm going to click here, click there, and finish that up. And then finally, I'm going to go put that missing piece back into our drawing. All right, so there we go. We have all our outside edges. We still need to put our inside lines. So the first inside lines will be from all of these cutouts. Now these cutouts are not actually hidden lines, and they're not hidden lines because this part and these cutouts are actually exposed to the outside. So we're going to do all this in the object layer. And the cutouts that we're going to put in or bring over are going to correspond to here, 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 and then on the other side 1, 2, 3, 4 as well. Now, realistically, you can argue that we should have them also for this cutout and that cutout. However, what that does is that just puts multiple lines right up at the edge here, and it serves no purpose in the drawing because it essentially adds noise as opposed to adding more detail to the drawing. So if you've noticed, and if you take a look in the book, the drawing I guess is on page 723 if you want to see the complete drawing, you'll see that they haven't added those, and we won't either. So we're going to choose line. We're going to start right here, bring over a tracking line, hit enter when we get to the part, and then hit enter when we get to the other side. Hit escape to finish. And we're just going to continue this 8 times. Let's see, third one I guess will be here. Enter, enter, escape. Fourth one is here. Now, when you do this one, you need to be a little careful because you need to make sure that you're actually putting the line in the right place. So I'm going to blow this up. And the line needs to intersect with this, not with the radius. So we do that. We come down, and we'll do this one first. Again, we need to make sure we intersect with the part, the straight line, and not the radius. There we have one. Enter, or I should, excuse me, not enter. And I think I may have said enter for all of these. You hit the mouse button. So it's left mouse button, escape. And again here, left mouse, escape. And then the final one, bring the tracking line over. If you lose the tracking line when you come back down to the horizontal, it will come back. Mouse button, escape. Okay, so that takes care of those lines. Now we need to put in the hidden lines. Again, the hidden lines will come from this. So to put in the hidden lines, first we want to change to our hidden layer. Choose our line. And we're going to come over from the bottom and bring over our tracking line. Now remember, these represent a hole, and that hole goes completely through the part. So we have to go through both layers. We put one there. And I started to draw a line. I don't want to do, so we're just bringing over the tracking line. Start, end, escape, and then finally the one at the top of the keyway. We start here and we end there. And we hit escape. Okay, so we have the part finished. Now we can start dimensioning it. So let's dimension this side first, since this is rather easy. However, before we dimension, let us set up some dimension styles. Let's look into our dimension style. So if we go to Format, Dimension Style, we have our mechanical style, which was set up from the previous homework assignment, the previous set of videos that I made. So we're going to start from that. We're going to modify that, and I've already modified this. However, we'll make a few changes. Now in primary units, I believe it was set up to fractional. We're going to change this to decimal. We're going to set the precision to 2 zeros, so it's 0.00. The angles will be decimal degrees. Precision will be 0. That's proper. Over in fit, I want you to check this one. Always keep text between external lines. And when we get to it, I'll show you why we wanted to choose this. And then finally, in fine-tuning, we can choose place text manually and draw dimension lines between external lines. And I believe this is set. Let's look at symbols and arrows. Arrow size 1.125. Text size. Text height was 0.20. I'm going to drop it down a little bit. So let's make it 0.15. And then we can hit OK. And then finally, just to be sure, let's choose set current. So that will make sure that we're on this mechanical dimension style is on the current layer. Okay, so let's come over to this side piece here. And the first thing we're going to do is choose our dimension layer. Of course, we want all our dimensions on our dimension layer. And then we're going to choose linear dimension. Come down here. And I'm going to move the 8.00 to the center. And I'm not sure that I like that, so I think I'm going to come back to Format, Dimension Style, Modify, and not place manually. If we need to change that, we can go back to it. Okay, so close. Okay, so this says 8.00. However, remember, this is a diameter. So we need to change this. So let's double click on the text. And sometimes this can be tough to do. But when you actually do it, what you'll see is up here, you'll see actually the menu change. And if you see right now, the cursor is before the 8. Now, if you actually went through the chapter and the text for chapter 6, you'll see that to put a diameter symbol in, what you need to do is you need to type %C, which will put in the diameter symbol. Alternatively, the other thing you can do once you're here is you can come up here to symbol, and then they actually give you the symbols. So they tell you what they are, but you can also just choose them. So for instance, if I do that, it'll all actually automatically put in a degree. Of course, I don't want the degree, so I'm gonna backspace out of it. Come back down here and backspace out of that. But you can see all these different symbols. Almost equal, angle, boundary line, center line. But the typical ones are diameter, plus and minus, degrees. There isn't one for radius, because if you remember, radius is just a capital R. Do we want to save our changes? Yes, we do. So we do want to leave our diameter as 8.00. Okay, so let's put the other diameter in, which will be the 2.5 on this side. We'll come over here, click one side, click on the other side, pull it out. Again, we need to modify it, %%C, and we get the diameter symbol. We need to do the thickness, so we click here and we click here. You don't want to click up here because that will bring the dimension line across the drawing. When we do this, we click here and then down in this corner, the dimension lines don't cross the drawing at all. So we can put that down there, and then we can pan up, put the dimension lines here. We get our 0.5 inches. Now, if you notice here, the 0.5 is on the inside, and that's related to one of the settings we set up. So what we can do is we can actually just move that to the outside, like so. So what we had to do is we had to click on the inside square. So on linear dimensions, you always have a marker for where the dimension is. On radial dimensions for circles and arcs and things, it's a little more tricky. Okay, so now we have all that done. Before we go ahead and start drawing this part, and if you notice, I've left all the construction lines still there because we are going to use some of them. We need to add even some more construction lines, maybe. Yes, we do. And some other additional lines that will help us. The first thing we're going to do, and actually before we do that, let's go ahead and add the radius right here. So we're going to select arc or the circle. And if you notice, the radius is coming out a little bit weird. And the reason for this is because of the settings that we made. So what I'm going to do for this particular dimension is I'm going to go back to the standard dimensioning and then go choose radius. So now when I choose my radius, I get the proper dimension. However, if you take a look at it, I get a couple of extra zeros. So I need to go back and change my standard dimension to make sure that that has the proper units. So we want decimal and 0.00. Okay. Close. So now we have the R of 0.25. Now, here's a question. I'm not going to give you the answer yet. I'm going to let you think about it. Why do we not put a second one on this side? Or why don't we say 2 places or something to denote that there's a second one here? I'll tell you in a minute, but you can go ahead and think about it if you like. And hopefully you will think about it. And hopefully you'll even come up with the answer. All right. So let's come over to here. And let's see what we want to add to help us out. First of all, at least initially, let's go ahead and just turn off our construction layer. And with our construction layer off, you can see the drawings a little bit easier to look at. And also with the construction layer off, it'll make it easier for us not to get confused for where our lines are and what lines we're looking at. So let's go to our center layer and let's put all these center lines in. Now, if you remember this, the diameter of this is 8, which means the radius of this is 4. So as we're putting center lines in, we can start from the center. We get our tracking line. We know that if we go to 4, that's going to take us to the edge of the part. So we can go, let's say, 2.5 inches longer. So let's make these lines 6.5. And then I can hit escape and do that. And maybe 6.5 is a little long. And delete that. Let's do 5.5. So we'll start here. Go 5.5. And that's pretty good. And in fact, we only need to go 5.5 on these two where we had to put in the 60-degree angle marker. The other ones we can just put in a length of 5 and that should be sufficient. Or actually even a length of 4.5. So let's go ahead and put the others in. Now, we could, if we wanted to, we could make a radial array. I haven't done this, but let's see how that's going to work out. If we went to polar array, so specify the center point of the array. So the center point, I guess, would be, actually, okay, so I selected first. Typically, you would choose array first, and then it would say select objects. Well, I select object, and then I hit enter. So now I want the center point, so I hit the middle. And there we go, we put all those lines in without having to draw each one individually. And that's okay. We could shorten up the all but these two if we wanted to, but that's not really necessary. Now I'm going to add a couple other lines, and you will see why shortly. And I'm going to add a line from the center at 15 degrees that goes out to a length of 5. And then I'm going to add another line at a length, or at an angle of, excuse me, I said 15 degrees, but what I really meant was minus 15 degrees off of the negative x-axis. And then I'm going to go plus 15 degrees off the negative x-axis. And again, I'm going to do a length of 5. And the reason I'm putting this in, not sure what happened there. Let's delete that one. The reason I'm putting these lines in, we want to find our follow up on our tracking line. Once we have our correct tracking line, we just hit 5, type 5, and hit enter. Okay, and then we hit escape. The reason I'm putting that in, if you take a look at the drawing, and again, if you don't have the book open, it's on page 723. We have an angle that's located here that we have to place. We have to place an arc here, and these two lines will be used to place that arc. Now we could have put this in on construction space and left it there forever, but because it's not part of the drawing, we don't really need to keep it there forever. But I do need to, however, put the construction lines, turn the construction lines back on, so that I can see and draw that arc. So that arc's going to be right here, from here to there. And that arc is going to be on the center layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose arc, and we're going to choose start, center, and end. And we're going to start at the intersection here. Okay, there we go. I guess I didn't have arc on. So we start at the intersection here. Next, we want to choose the center. And then finally, we need to choose the end. And to choose the end, we need to come up here. And if you see my arc is going in the wrong direction, it's going almost completely around the circle. So I need to hit my shift button. Sorry, it's the control button. The control button will make the arc go into only this small area. So then I can complete the arc there. Now once I do that, I don't need these lines anymore. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete them because I don't want to forget about them and leave them there. And so why do we need this? The reason we need this was twofold. One is we have to show that we have a diameter of 4.5 that's, well, I guess it's only for one reason. We have a diameter of 4.5 that's used to set up this radius of 1.5. If you remember when we started, we made a circle with a radius of 1.5 here that was used for this cutout. So we need this arc portion in order to show that radius. So now that we have that, let's go back into our dimensions and let's see if we got this dimension right. So we're going to choose our radius dimension and we're going to select the arc and we're going to bring it out. And our dimension is not quite what we want, is it? If you look at the dimension in the book, you'll see that it's a little bit different. And the reason it is because I didn't go back to my mechanical dimension, I believe. And let's now look at our format, dimension style, modify. Let's see if I got these things, everything right here. Our fit, draw a dimension line between external lines. Cancel. Cancel. We need to delete this dimension and redraw it. So now we come back here. We've changed our dimension style back to mechanical. Now, if you don't have this dimension toolbar, remember you can always go to Format, Dimension Style, and you can change your dimension style here. But we want to be on the mechanical. We choose our radius dimension, choose the arc, and it's a little bit different, not quite what we want yet, but we're getting better. And this is essentially what you have to do because you have a lot of different changes that you can make in order to adjust the dimension. So here we always keep the text between the external lines. We have our text there. Our fit is here. Let me go back. I'm going to look at a different drawing, which I've already done this on to make sure that I see where we got our dimension style wrong. Modify. Suppress arrows if they don't fit inside extension lines. beside place text manually is on. And text centered left to right. With text alignment horizontal. Okay. So let's come back over to this one. And we're going to go into Format, Dimension Style, Modify. Fit. We're modifying the mechanical, and we're using the mechanical close. Let's delete this. And we deleted a little too much. Luckily we have undo functions. I select my arc. And I'm still not getting my text on the inside. So I'm going to stop this video and we'll come back. I'll come back with another video to explain why this is different, even though it looks the same as what I just saw in the other setup.